What happens when someone builds a thriving career in finance and then walks away because something deeper is calling? John Oberg is not just the founder and CEO of Precina Health, a company transforming how diabetes and chronic conditions are treated across America. He's a man who's made a radical pivot from Wall Street to the front lines of metabolic health, driven by the conviction that the system was broken and that people deserve better. Under his leadership, Precina has become a force in reversing type 2 diabetes through lifestyle medicine, empowering patients to reclaim their health rather than managing lifelong decline. But John's story is not only about business, it's about identity, purpose, faith, risk, and the quiet courage it takes to build something mission-driven in a profit-driven world. He's also the author of Tales of Abundance, a reflection of mindset, prosperity, and living in alignment with deeper values. John represents a rare intersection of financial acumen, spiritual grounding, and health innovation. His journey challenges the conventional definition of success and asks a more uncomfortable question. What's wealth? This is a conversation about building companies that heal, leading with conviction, and redefining what enough means. And before we start the episode, a quick word from our sponsor, Deep Wealth and the Deep Wealth Mastery Program. Here's Bill, a graduate, who says, the Deep Wealth Mastery Program has transformed the KPIs we're using to accelerate growth and profits. Or how about Emery, who says, and I love this, and I quote, the Deep Wealth Mastery Program helped me create the right mindset for both growing my business and later my future exit. I now know what questions to ask, what to do and not to do, which is priceless. The team and I have found dangerous skeletons and gaps that we're now addressing due to the Deep Wealth Program. Today, our actions have a massive ROI. Absolutely love that. And now, speaking of growth and adding value, check out what Bruce says. And I quote, as a business owner, I'm always looking for new programs, systems, CEO peer groups, and strategies to improve my business. Hands down, the Deep Wealth Mastery Program is the absolute best. I'm both growing my business and preparing for a future exit at the same time. It doesn't get any better. And I got to tell you, as I hear these testimonials, this is exactly why I do what I do. My mission, the team's mission here at Deep Wealth, is to literally change the social fabric of society, one business owner at a time and one liquidity event at a time. The Deep Wealth Mastery Program, it's the only one based on a 9-figure deal. And that deal, that was my deal. You know my story. I said no to a 7-figure offer. I created a system that we now call Deep Wealth Mastery, and that's exactly what helped myself and my business partners welcome from a different buyer, a different offer, a 9-figure deal. So if you're interested in growing your profits, preparing for a future liquidity event, whether that's 3 years away or 33 years away, and if you want to optimize your post-exit life, Deep Wealth Mastery is for you. Please email success@deepwealth.com. Again, that's success, SUCCESS, at deepwealth.com. We'll send you all the information about the Deep Wealth Mastery Program, otherwise known as the Scale for Ultimate Sales System. Better yet, why not hop on a complimentary strategy call? We'll see where you are at your business and what's standing between you and your financial independence and your dreams. So that's where you want to be. You want to be with other successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and founders just like you who are looking to create market disruptions. Whether you're a startup, whether you've been in business for 3 or 4 decades, whether you're manufacturing, whether you're high tech, SaaS, low tech, whatever the case may be, come on in and network with other business owners, with other businesses just like you, because they all want to lock in their financial freedom and enjoy both success and fulfillment. Again, the 90-day Deep Wealth Mastery Program, it has your name on it. All you need to do is take the next step. Please send an email to success@deepwealth.com. Deep Wealth Nation, welcome to another episode of the Deep Wealth Podcast. Well, Deep Wealth Nation, let me ask you something. When it comes to your business, for your growth, for your vision, your goals, how are you doing? Where's it at? Where are you today? Where do you want to be? And while you're at it, how's your health? Is your health your first wealth? And how do you think about that? In the House of Deep Wealth, we have a very special guest, a fellow podcast host, founder, entrepreneur, all-around terrific guy, and Mr. Success. So, John, welcome to Deep Wealth Podcast. An absolute pleasure to have you with us. Wow, you have quite the story. Let's go back to the beginning because there's always a story behind the story. So what's your story? What got you from where you were to where you are today?
It feels like it's totally by accident. For me, I'm a pretty faithful guy, but I never saw me getting here. If you asked me 10 years ago or 5 years ago where I was going to be, I wouldn't have believed it. So I started off in college. Had a hard science background, thought I was going to medical school. Some things happened. I ended up in the world of business, had some success, ended up getting an advanced degree and then starting some businesses. I never would have thought of myself as an entrepreneur starting businesses. I got into professional services and doing some consulting work for a long time. At the end of the day, though, I've always just tried to kind of follow the skills and talents that I had. And then I ended up with now I have a medical practice. I'm a medical social worker. I work inside of a medical practice. My partner is a physician. We found a way to reverse type 2 diabetes for low income and rural populations at a really, really high level. And so we're taking that out to the world and saying, hey, look, everything you thought you knew about type 2 diabetes, we put it together in a way that in our first pilot study, we reversed it for 98% of our patients, in patients that are generally considered really hard to treat, very sick, low income. And so we're really, really excited about the work we're doing. And it's the culmination of a lot of work that I've done around like organizational change and change management and kind of IO psychology. And so it's been this really kind of weaving, wandering road where I've founded companies and exited companies. And here I am now working inside of a medical practice. So
Absolutely love that. And we are going to get there. We'll talk all about the health side and what you're doing for
yeah.
people who are facing type 2 diabetes. Before we get that, though, from one post-exit entrepreneur to another, when you look back at your journey, and I'm specifically thinking of someone in Deep Wealth Nation, they know they're going to be having some kind of liquidity event. Maybe they're taking some chips off the table, having some investors come in. Perhaps it's going to be a full exit and they'll go on to a different chapter. When you look back at your own journey, is there anything that stands out of what you would either do again or absolutely not do that you can share with Deep Wealth Nation?
I talk about this with my family and my consulting clients. And one of the things I've done really, really well is I've kept an anchor to my values and another anchor for where I think I'm going to be in 10 years. And the values are pretty immovable and the 10 years moves a lot. But every year, at least once a year, sometimes 2 or 3 times a year in times of change, I'll write down what I think my life could look like in the next 10 years. And it's been pretty different as I look back at all the different times I've edited this document. It's changed quite a bit. But having that anchor in my core values that helps me make hard decisions in difficult moments and having kind of a direction for the future, even that's just broadly directional, it makes the hard decisions a little bit easier. It doesn't make them easy, but it makes them a little bit easier because I'm grounded in my core values and I'm grounded on the direction that I think I'm headed. And it's not like in 10 years, I'm going to be on this date at this place with this many dollars in my bank account. It's like, generally speaking, here's what my family's going to look like. Generally speaking, here's what my financial life is going to look like. Generally speaking, here's how I'm going to have fun. Generally speaking, here's how I want to engage with my friends. Generally speaking, here's the level of fitness that I want to have. And when I think about all those things in terms, and fitness is about intellectual fitness and spiritual fitness and physical fitness. When I think about all those things, the decisions you have to make today become more obvious. Not totally obvious, but more obvious. And so I don't have to go back to the whiteboard every time a hard decision comes up.
And so founder to founder, as you're talking about this, I'm putting myself when back in the trenches, the pressure is on, teams depending on me. It's still the early scrappy days, 10 years. Wow, to me, that would seem like a lifetime, never mind 10 months or even 10 days. So how do you, I'm not even going to use the word balance. I don't believe in balance. How do you blend that of, okay, I know what's going on today, but 10 years out, going to do my best to see what it's like 10 years out and then keep myself, I like how you said grounded. What's the magic sauce in terms of you being able to do that consistently?
Well, I think, first of all, I've had some type of this document in my possession since I was 19 years old. I'm 52 now. And so, is that right? Yeah, holy cow. Yeah, almost 53, a couple more days. I've given myself permission to be wrong about the 10-year thing because the only consistency in all those documents is they've all been wrong, right? It's really about just kind of dreaming the life that I want to have. And it's become much more clear over time. So you said balance, for example. One of my core values 25 years ago was balance that I wrote out. It didn't feel right. And so a few years after that, I changed it to being deliberate because deliberate felt so much better to me than being balanced because I wasn't really ever perfectly balanced day to day. But over the period of a lifetime, I have really good balance, right? But that's because I've been deliberate throughout the entire process. And I will tell you, a lot of things that I thought were really important to me 25 years ago aren't even a little bit important to me today.
And as we're talking about this, I'm going to broach a subject that for some of the listeners in Deep Wealth Nation may have them feel uncomfortable. In Deep Wealth Nation, be open. You may not subscribe to this, but just listen. We have an incredibly successful founder and post-exit entrepreneur. And I'm wondering, John, when it comes to your journey, when it comes to your success, I know that spirituality, faith, God has played a role in that. If I can broach that subject, how
Yeah,
has
sure.
that played a role with you back in the day and even today as you look back and as you look forward?
So in the early part of my career, I was not faithful. I was deeply agnostic. And I think that most people would say during that period of my career, I was very successful by worldly standards. And I think people would look at this part of my career and say, also successful by worldly standards. And so the difference for me is that I've had an immense amount of more happiness and less stress with my faith. It's made my life just a much better life for me. But everyone's going to have their own path when it comes to spirituality. I think I've got a pretty strong story to tell. And I'd say for anybody who wants to talk to me about that in a kind of a non judgmental environment, I'd have them reach out to me individually. I'll buy them a virtual cup of coffee. I'm not going to judge, but I'm happy to share that story and really just let someone hear that I changed my mind about things. And I changed my mind from being a really devout agnostic to a really devout Catholic with a series of events. I'm a scientist, and so I had so much overwhelming evidence in front of me that I couldn't not make the decision that I made. And so, but everyone comes to their place in life differently. I get that.
It's so interesting as you're talking about that. I'm reflecting on my own journey, very similar to you. I've gone through different, we'll call them chapters in my life where there was a spiritual component or God, or there wasn't God. And looking back, I see that when I wasn't showing up, God was showing up. And he was the one
Yeah.
that was carrying me not realizing though that at the time. And my goodness, that can be not just another episode, it can be an entire series with that. But Deep Nation, where are you on that? Because I can promise you this, go within, think about that. And I know, John, it sounds like for yourself, I don't want to put words in your mouth. And certainly for myself, when I've opened up that door and welcomed whatever you like to call Deep Nation, God, spirituality, the universe, for me, it's God, it has made the journey richer, more fulfillment, dare I say, even more success along the way. And so, with all of that said, let's now turn to what you're doing. And I'm excited to hear you talk about this. And for us to talk about this, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. Here at Deep Wealth, we started with our 90-day mastery program, Deep Wealth Mastery, which took the system that I created for myself and my business partners of how we said no to a 7-figure offer and yes to a 9-figure exit deal. And we took those same strategies and put them together in the 90-day mastery program. We then took that from Deep Wealth Mastery Exit, if you have plans to exit, and then Deep Wealth Mastery Growth, if you have no plans to exit, but you want to grow your profits. And now behind the scenes, we are working on Deep Wealth Mastery Health. As we're talking about offline, my own belief, my own bias is that as a founder, if my health isn't spot on, if I'm not getting out of bed inflammation free as much as possible, without that pain, without the brain fog, so the opposite, I have clarity, I have energy, I have focus, I can pour that into my business. If I'm the opposite of that, not only am I suffering, my team is going to suffer. I'm more irritable. The business is going to suffer. So talk to us about type 2 diabetes and what you're doing, because I know for most people, their first reaction is probably, wait a minute, John, come on. We all know type 2 diabetes is not reversible. What are you talking about? This is science fiction.
Well, I mean, it is. I mean, the reality is that chronic metabolic disease, which is type 2 diabetes, it's cardiovascular disease, there's other conditions as well. And they have a lot of this same underlying science. And so I got frustrated about this problem when my mother-in-law got really sick, ended up in the hospital, was totally avoidable as a hospital visit. And so I went back to USC to get my doctorate. And this is the thing I wanted to solve was how do you help people reverse their disease? And what we do is we look at all of the medical conditions that are someone's facing in their life. We look at all the mental health variables that someone's facing, some very significant and clinical, some non-clinical. And then we look at all the other things that press on a person's life. We look at like the social determinants of health and all the different things that cause treatment burden for a patient. And when we evaluate all those things, we say, how do you move someone from where they are to where they want to be? Generally, it's done through radical incrementalism. And so I think for successful entrepreneurs that are listening today, it maybe is like, oh, that's how I handle habits. And that's true. And you do things like habit stacking and changing habits. And so what we do is we help people change their health habits. And that usually comes in the form of medicine changes that need to happen. You'd be shocked at the number of medicines that people are taking that are not being taken effectively or in ways that are helpful. It's really challenging to look at inside of our practice. And then we look at all of the mental health issues that need to be addressed. And then we look at all of the kind of non-clinical issues. And so usually you start with things that are really severe clinically, like type 2 diabetes. But then once you get those things under control, you can look into other things like sleep and sex and like all the other issues that people want to deal with. And you deal with them in the right way. But sometimes I meet people that want like the silver bullet. They want like the thing that's going to solve the problem instead of solving the real root cause. And so we talk a lot about root cause, but we make it shame-free and guilt-free, and we take really small steps. Like I remember one patient, they were so motivated, they wanted to go walk a mile the next day. I was like, well, take it easy. We're going to call the mailbox a success. And if you make it to the mailbox and back, and they call back the next day, they're like, yeah, I hurt my knee walking to the mailbox. Like, hey, no big deal. Like, let's fix it. And the next day they walk to the mailbox twice. And so really, really small steps can compound in the same way that interest compounds in a bank account.
And as we're talking about this study is now dated, and sadly, I suspect it's actually worse. I'm going to round up a little bit. When it comes to metabolic disease, it was saying that either people have this right now or they're likely going to have it in the very near term. It was something like 88%. So let's call it 9 out of 10 people. And the study's already dated, so it's at least 9 out of 10 people, maybe even more. What's going on? This is a simple question on the surface. It's not such a simple answer. Big picture, if we zoom back for just a moment here, John, how do we even get here? We spend so much money on so-called healthcare. I call it sick care, but we're spending all this money. As Americans, we spend more money on healthcare than just about any other nation, but we're one of the least healthiest. Try and take the positive spin on that. How do we get here? What's going on that's causing?
I mean, everyone knows the answer. Like, we're not eating well and we're not moving. Like, I mean, that's the reality. And then we want to solve it by sometimes taking medicine and continuing to eat poorly and not move. And so and people know what's happening. Like, there's nothing we've done that's like a secret in that way. What we've done is found a new way to assess all of these things, because there's 5 different doctors telling people 5 different things, or there's 100 things on the to-do list. And what we've done is this kind of clinical assessment that says, here's the place you start, here's how small it can be, and here's how we build a sustainable lifetime that's forever sustainable. It takes time. In our case, we meet really, really sick people where they are and get them to be more healthy. I think if someone's mostly healthy, we're happy to talk to them about the optimization and how you get into like longevity and health span. Those are really important conversations to have. And you can start to do things that help you on the edges if you're doing the kind of fundamental things. But if you're not doing the fundamental things right and you want a silver bullet to fix it, then you're kind of working against yourself. The number of times I see people taking 2 medicines that are working directly opposite one another, and they wonder why it's not working. It's like, well, they're literally the opposite.
So let's take it back from the beginning. Okay, John, I heard about you in the Deep Wealth podcast, and I'm interested in what you and the team are doing. I fall into the category of the types of people that you help, and I also happen to be an entrepreneur, founder, and I have all the other stresses that come along with that.
Yeah.
Okay, here I am. Lead the way. I will do whatever you ask me to do because I don't know how to do it, but health is important to me. I want to have a new day. I want to have a new chapter. So let's roll back the curtain. What's your secret sauce of what's going on here?
We do some crazy stuff. Like, before we see someone in our clinic, we get all their medical records, and then our clinicians do the craziest thing you've ever heard of. They read them. And that's not a shot at doctors. I work with lots of doctors in my world, and all of them are smart, well-educated, well-meaning. They do good work. But the system right now is not set up to help a doctor succeed in the way that most doctors would like to succeed. And so what we've done is we've reimagined the entire medical experience in terms of the clinical experience, the administrative experience for the provider. So the first thing we do is grab all these things, and we really do read through everything. And then we start evaluating all the different things that could be going on from all the different points of view. And then we help all of the doctors get lined up into kind of one plan of care. And that one plan of care starts with the medicine, obviously. We look at the mental health, but sometimes the mental health has to go first. We get a patient who we did a quick clinical assessment of their depression, and they were clinically depressed. And we dove into why. It's because she'd lost her husband of 50 years a year before and had never gone through grief counseling. And so she found no reason to go take her medicine. Like, life wasn't worth living. We got a grief counselor involved, and 6 weeks later, she was taking medicine. She had reasons to live again. And all of a sudden, things started to happen. Another woman had retired. This is great for your audience because she retired and didn't know what she was going to do next. Also exhibiting signs of, in this case, subclinical depression. And her whole dream was to teach underprivileged youth how to read, but she had no idea how to get engaged. So we got on a 3-way call with her local librarian, and within a couple of weeks, she was engaged in volunteer work, something bigger than herself. And so one of the greatest things that happens when someone retires or has a big exit is they haven't planned for what's next. And that can lead to subclinical or even clinical depression in lots of cases. And so I talk with my family and my team and my consulting clients. How do you think through what the next 10 years is going to look like, not just as a form of like a compass, but making sure you have the right skill sets, the right relationships, so that you don't have this really nasty transition period that in some cases can literally end up killing people. Like there's some science out there that says 5 years after you retire, you're dead.
Yeah.
And so you've got to work at something. It doesn't mean you have to work at a job for income. It can be nonprofit work. It can be a garden. There's a lot of ways that your body can engage in work, but having work is good for the human, biologically speaking.
Couldn't agree with you more. And from my own personal experience, so here I have my 9-figure exit. And from the outside world looking in, Jeffrey, you are set for life. Wow, you did it. Congratulations. And sure, that first day, pinched myself. Am I dreaming? Was it real? Yeah, Jeffrey, it was real. Checking the bank account. Oh, wow, look at all those zeros. But I got to tell you, it got to a point, John, where the highlight of my day, the highlight of my life was lunch. And no one feels sorry for the well-to-do fellow who's sitting at home in his pajamas, nothing to do, bored out of his mind. And it was, wow, I never really had my happily ever after because I was so focused on crossing that finish line with the business. And then later on, it was the exit. And actually, not even step 1, step 0 of the Deep Wealth Mastery program. It's what does your post-exit life look like? And we do what you're doing with a 10-year ahead, and we'll even go a little bit further than that. Hey, right now, today, I know you don't have time. I know you're busy. I know you're maxed out, but let's invest some time. Let's do a bit of a straw man of what the post-exit could look like for you and try trial balloons and see what's working, not working right now. By the time you get there and you have that thing called a non-compete, you already have the momentum and the rituals and everything else behind you. So I'm right there with you in terms of doing that. But let's take a step back for a moment.
Yeah.
You're working with your patients, your clients who are now coming to you. Is it the good old Pareto's law, the 80-20 principle that, hey, Jeffrey, 80% of our patients wouldn't need to see us if they didn't do 20% of these same things, because these 20% of the same things are creating the 80% of these not so great outcomes, or maybe it's 90-10 or 95-5 or maybe even 97-3. Are there some common patterns that you're seeing out there that if we're aware of, we can stop doing or start doing to put us in a better place?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is people need to move more. Like however much you're moving and exercising, for most people, the answer is not enough. And so we try to get people to is one milestone is can you get to 150 minutes of activity per week? And that doesn't mean 150 minutes of exercise where you're sweating. For some people, it's as simple as just walking at least 10 minutes at a time, ideally 30 minutes at a time, 5 days a week. But if you can walk 10 minutes at a time and do that 3 times a day for 150 minutes a week, that's kind of like a baseline of activity. Just walking on a flat surface, don't have to be sweating, just movement. So that would be one thing to do. A second thing to do would be to eat more whole food. We call it moving to the right, where processed food's on the left and then whole food on the right. If you can move toward whole food, right, that's just a better way of eating. And for a whole lot of reasons that are scientifically very well understood. And we can get kind of deep into the cellular level science. But the reality is you don't need to understand that cellular level science. Just know that when you eat whole food, it is better for you. And so let me give you one of the examples is like if you juice something, you're throwing away part of the fruit. Not good. If you're mashing it up in a blender, you're not throwing part of it away. It's still whole. Good. Right? So just those little things can make such a big difference. So move, eat, and then if you're taking medicines because you've got something that's sick, just make sure you're taking medicines you understand. And our philosophy is you get people on all the right medicine, get them moving and eating, then you can get them off of medicine so that it becomes food as medicine in the long term.
Absolutely love what I'm hearing. My goodness, there's so much there to talk about and unpack. Food as medicine, whole food, and Deep Wealth Nation, something to think about. And would love to hear your thoughts about this, John. My gauge of the Whole Foods even, and by the way, Deep Wealth Nation, this is not Whole Foods, the store, it's whole food without a label.
Like the entire food.
That's right, the way it was intended. One question to ask is, hey, if I brought my great-grandmother, whether she's alive or not alive, but if she were with me right now today and she was looking at the packaging on this food, and maybe there's not even packaging, which is even better because of whole food, would she understand what's there? And if the answer is no, probably not where I want to be in terms of what I'm eating. That said, though, John, if you could wave the magic wand and you can design a day for me as a founder, entrepreneur, business owner, you know what that's like. You've had this multiple times with your startups. What would a typical day look like in a way that I'm getting stuff done on the business side, but I'm also getting stuff done on the health side? The two are, I'm going to use the word in harmony, not at one at the expense of the other. What would a typical day
Yeah.
look like for you?
I think the most important thing we do with people is not to get them like to the perfect day. So to push back on your question a little bit, it's what day would be just 1% or even 1/100th of a percent better than what they're doing today. And so if you're not moving at all, then just move for 10 minutes. If you're moving for 10 minutes a day, move for 20. If you're moving for 20, move for 30. So just take one step in the right direction. And then if you have a business dinner and you're going to a steakhouse, by all means, get the steak. Like it's fine to do that. Like I think being a teetotaler is not like I don't want to give you the impression that I don't have a glass of wine. I definitely have a glass of wine. But I do that at times when I'm being deliberate, back to our earlier conversation. It's not about balance, it's about being deliberate. And so I do those things when I'm there to experience something. And so when I'm not at a steakhouse and there's a steak on the menu, I'm probably getting the fish.
Fair enough. Okay. And so let's talk about that because I know from my own experience with my travels, both here in the US, also abroad, there's lots of food out there when it comes
Yeah.
to whole food and when it comes to food that's not laced with some of the chemicals. And we can talk about glyphosate and seed oils and all those other kinds of things. I find myself in a food desert in the sense of, sure, there's lots of options there, not necessarily my kind of options. And so, as a founder entrepreneur, hey, it's not me having control of my environment necessarily, or I'm on travels, I'm on business trips, or even on a family vacation, going away and getting some downtime. How do I handle that in terms of trying to make the most of healthy choices with food where I'm going to say it's not so easy?
Yeah, I think there's like having a perfect diet is really tough. And I see people that go out and they try to have a perfect diet when they're eating out and someone else is controlling the kitchen. And so for me, it's always about just doing the best you can in the moment and having enough flexibility that you're not creating so much mental stress about it that you're creating other burden problems for your health and your anxiety. So when you're at home, you control that kitchen. And so do your best there. And then when you're out, do your best there. And those two bests might be a little bit different. And I think there are some people that we've met that they really are very sensitive to lots of different foods, and that's much more difficult. And so I remember traveling once to a country where I didn't speak the language. Yeah, I was traveling to somewhere where we had cards that explained all the different, and that was a little more difficult. We had to be more careful where we eat. But I would say don't let perfection get in the way of good enough. When we talk about radical incrementalism, there's so many people that I meet that sometimes are trying to kind of like thread the needle with perfection that they miss the big important piece of did you move 150 minutes this week? Like
Sure.
just start there. And there are some people where the workout becomes obsessive and it becomes a problem because now the workout is the obsession. I read a book a long time ago where they talked about ultramarathoners and these 100-mile runs they were doing, and they drew their blood and it looked the same as someone who had cancer. The blood cell count was so. So I think that moderation is the key to most things, and then just taking one step in the right direction is the most important thing to focus on.
And so you're talking about movement and something as simple as walking, not to confuse simple with simplicity. Let's go behind the scenes, a little bit of the science.
Yeah.
And I'm right there with you. I've now, as best I can, made it a daily practice of, hey, after every meal, if I can walk 15 minutes, 20 minutes, even 30 minutes just to walk it off after every meal, I'm going to do that to the best of my abilities. Why is that so important? What's going on behind the scenes, health wise, metabolic wise, that's helping my body do what it needs to do
Yeah.
after a meal?
At a really high level, if you eat after you work out, it's a little bit different than if you eat before you work out. It's the way that the body's hormones are handling the food coming into your system. And so if you are using the food for energy immediately, your body doesn't have to think about how to store as much of it. And so at the end of that's at the highest level, that's the thing to think about. So put energy in my body, use some of it, then your body's going to store the rest of it for later. But the truth is your body needs energy all the time. There's not a minute of the day that your cells in your body aren't using energy. Your brain's always using energy. Your heart's always using energy. Your muscles are always using energy. Like that's how they stay alive. And so your body is trying to find ways to store that energy in the right. And there's different ways your body stores energy. It stores it inside skeletal muscular cells and in fat cells. And it also stores it inside the liver. And there's these different ways that it gets stored for short-term energy and for longer-term energy. And so the reality is that if you can move right after you eat, generally speaking, I'm using pretty broad generalizations here. That's the way that your body's going to handle it most effectively. And your body, the other thing that I would be really sensitive to, your body is not designed to graze. So if you're constantly adding calories to your body through juice or soda or candy or whatever, your body never gets a chance to go into that place where it's taking care of the food that is ingested. It's constantly handling the food that you're eating, and it never gets to go into the fasting state. I don't mean like intermittent fasting. I just mean at a point where it flips from I'm storing energy to I'm using energy. So if I'm eating, I'm storing energy. I've got to get my body back to the place where it can be using energy.
So I'm being deliberate about what I'm eating. I'm having whole foods wherever possible. When possible, I am taking a walk. Hey, it's free, it's not challenging. Take a walk after I
Yeah.
eat. And it sounds like from food as medicine, I know it's so overused. We've all heard food is
Yeah.
medicine, yeah, whatever. But really, food is medicine to movement. Let's get to mindset and mental health in just a moment about that. But when I'm doing that, it sounds like you and the team are not only helping to reverse type 2 diabetes, bigger picture wise, from a metabolic side of things, dare I say, even reverse aging, reversing other kinds of diseases where perhaps type 2 diabetes, it's the canary in the gold mine. There's so much more that's going on there, but this is the first onset of that. Would love your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think reverse aging might be a little bit a step too far for my comfort zone, but I would say that definitely reversing metabolic disease happens if it's caught early enough. Now, there are people where the damage is done and the damage has been done. It's going to be harder and impossible to reverse that damage, and all you're trying to do is control it from making it worse. But there are, for most people, you can reverse that damage. Not all of it, but parts of it. And it's not just damage with that ends up in type 2 diabetes. It ends up in cardiovascular damage, and vascular damage shows up in different ways inside your kidneys and inside your brain. So, and again, I'm a doctor of behavioral science, not in medical science. That's my partner. So I'm kind of using his words as best I can. The high level thing that most of our patients really care about is I want to feel better. I
Mhm.
want to look better. I want to live longer. Like these are the things that really, really matter. And so what we tell them is do the big things first and then do the edge things second.
Sure. And so, from mindset, from mental health, some of the things that perhaps is your background, is your specialty, what would you want us to know of how that plays a role, not just day to day, but big picture wise, even going down that 10-year map that we're speaking about with overall health? What's going on there?
Yeah, I think stress is one of the ones I get talked about a lot. We have a lot of executives that I work with that have a lot of stress for a lot of reasons. And a lot of times we find that stress is coming from a lot of angles. It's personal, it's professional, it's kind of coming from everywhere all at once. They have aging parents, they've got kids, they've got a business, they've got multiple things in the business causing stress. And so we talk a lot to people about knowing when and how to shorten the field. That's the vernacular that I use. And shortening the field means you write down all your stressors and you, instead of worrying about 10 years, now you bring it back to right here and now. And sometimes right here and now means today only. If it's really stressful, it might mean what's happening in the next 15 minutes. And every 15 minutes, I take a breath and I figure out the next 15 minutes and the next 15 minutes. So that's when there's something kind of overwhelming happening. And so what we do in those circumstances is we have the person write down everything causing them stress, big or small, and then figuring out like what must happen in the next 15 minutes. And once they get out of that next 15-minute stage, then the next question is what things can I do to knock those small stressors off of the list so that I have more energy to handle the larger stressors? And so that's how we talk about just getting into managing those day-to-day stressors for entrepreneurs like listeners you have here.
Absolutely. And stress, my goodness, that leads to internal inflammation. We don't even see it. And
Yeah.
our mental mindset, our clarity, our focus, everything else. And we've talked about it. We've kind of danced around it. Why don't we take it head on now? Because when we're not at our best, our sleep is going to suffer. And at least from my side of things, sleep, number one, it's free. But number two, it's probably our biggest underrated superpower. So in other words, John, I could be eating whole foods. I could be taking a walk after every meal. I could be doing all the right
Yeah.
things. If my quality of sleep isn't there, then a lot of what I'm doing really isn't going to make that much of a difference. And on the flip side, if I'm having great sleep, it's going to amplify and leverage what I'm doing. So would love your thoughts on sleep, of where it's at or where it's not at, especially for the patients and the clients that you're helping and how you're helping to get them to a better place.
Yeah, I mean, sleep's a big one, right? There's a reason that sleep deprivation is one of the most common torture mechanisms used in probably in the real world, but definitely in movies. Like, I'm not an expert in that world, but I know that when I don't get enough sleep, I certainly feel tortured, and it can really make someone not their best self. And there's a lot of reasons that people might be losing sleep. There's mechanical reasons, meaning that maybe there's something like a sleep apnea that needs to be handled by a device. There could be chemical reasons that need to be treated medically. And there's mental health reasons, things like anxiety that can cause a loss of sleep. And so if someone's really having a problem sleeping, I would say get the right professionals involved immediately to find the right root cause. Because if you're just trying trial and error, it may take a long time to get there, and that can really make the problem worse. And so get a medical professional involved. They'll know whether or not to get a mental health professional involved, but like rule out the problems so that you can sleep more effectively. And there's everything from like temperature and light, making sure that you have a cool temperature in the room and making sure it's a dark environment. Those things can be helpful. But if someone's got sleep apnea, it's dangerous to use those two answers when there's a real sleep apnea problem. And so I think medical professionals need to get involved. We had a patient recently who we checked all the assessments off, and it was none of the medical, none of the mechanical, and it turned out to be anxiety problems. And so we went through that stress and anxiety process that I just talked to you through a few minutes ago and helped them. And it went from like, an hour of sleep a night to 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night to 4 hours of sleep to 6 to 8. And so, but getting sleep is critically important for being able to have the capacity, the emotional energy to deal with all those stressors. Otherwise, the problem just snowballs.
It's a great point. Deep Health Nation, as John and I are talking, hey, this is two friends. We're at a fireside chat. We're sharing data points of one. This is not medical advice. Anything that we're talking about, if you're thinking about that, please seek the right medical advice. Seek a professional in that area who's a specialist who can help you. And speaking of help, though, John,
I got to say it real quick. If it's an emergency, you got to call 911 for a medical emergency here in the United States, 988 if it's a mental health emergency. If you don't have that, call 911. They'll get help for you right away.
And so as we're looking at changing people's lives and helping them get to the best of who they are so they can have a better company, a better team, solve more problems, help other people, when you look at what the practice has done, any success stories that come to mind of some patients who have come in that were over here and, oh my goodness, Jeffrey, you're not going to believe it, but now they're over here and here's what happened and here's how we got them there?
So we measure, there's so many. The hundreds we have listed out that we keep track of them inside of our team. And one of the providers used to work in a family practice office. And they said we had, I can't remember the number, maybe 20 people that were seeing patients. And once every 6 months, they'd have this great story that they could share. And she came to me one day and said, I'm now hearing these kinds of stories once a week on my own. So we have tons of these stories. I'll tell you a few of my favorites. One of them was there was a nurse who ended up in the emergency room, and we measure diabetes with an A1C level. And the A1C that this person had was 14. Now you have diabetes when you're a 6.5. When you're a 7 or a 7.5, you're getting interventions. When you're like 8, 9, 10, like things are bad. 10, you might see hospitalization. So 14 was really bad. And so she was referred into our practice by the hospital. And she said, I don't want to use insulin. We said, well, 14, we'll see. Let's see how you respond to treatment the first 2 weeks. 6 months later, without using insulin, her diabetes was totally in control. 100% in remission 6 months later. And we hear that type of story regularly.
And John, as you're talking about this, this is remarkable. And again, Deep Health Nation, they're an individual is different. What works for one person isn't necessarily going to work for you. John, with my next question, I'm not pointing fingers and there's no judgment here. I know that the medical establishment, they're doing the best that they can with the training that they have and the resources that they have. That said, though, if I'm someone in Deep Health Nation, I'm thinking, well, John, yeah, sure. Look, I see my doctor or my family doctor. I get my annual physical. I spend my 5 to 7 minutes here with him or her, and I'm getting the rundown. Everything's coming back great. Should I be worried? And if they're saying, my doctor's saying everything's good, and you're saying, well, hey, Jeffrey, maybe not so good, where's the gap? What's the difference? What am I missing here? What do you want Deep Health Nation to know about that?
Yeah, I would say, I believe that most people would say that the system itself is not ideal. And I accept that, and we need to work on it, no doubt about it. But as a patient, you don't need to wait for the system to get fixed to fix the system for you. And so I wish that patients, and we tell this to our patients, we want you to be a consumer of your healthcare in the same way we consume everything else. Get educated and make sure that you're making eyes wide open decisions with your healthcare provider. And so we would say that you'd have an expert plan that fits you, the patient. An expert plan requires a couple things. It requires an expert, that's the doctor. It requires a patient who is saying, I'm willing to do that. Because if it's not good medically, it's not a good plan. And if the patient's not willing to do it, it's not a good plan. So you've got to have an expert and a patient who says what they're willing and not willing to do. Then you've got to put that patient into a community, a small little community where people can support all that. And then you've got to change the plan in small little ways often. So the first time that something's not working, fix it, fix it, fix it. Make it really easy. And so when you put those four components together, that's what I talked about in my TED talk, you get a plan that's not so fragile. And so you don't want a fragile plan. And so I would say consume healthcare the way you consume the best parts of things in your life. So if you're most, I love scuba diving. And so I love consuming things about scuba diving. And so I'm really excited about it. I researched it, I check it out. So know enough about your health that you can consume your healthcare in the ways you consume those exciting hobbies in your life. And if you're not excited about that, look, AI is not going to have all the right answers. It's really dangerous to use AI for medicine, but it's not dangerous to ask AI what you should be talking to your doctor about as long as you go talk to your doctor about it.
Absolutely. And Deep Health Nation, while we're talking about this, I suspect Deep Health Nation, your business is successful. You have business KPIs. Well, do you have health KPIs? And you're saying, well, Jeffrey, John, health KPIs. What do you mean health KPIs? That's exactly the point. We have to be our own advocate for our health, and we should be measuring not to the extent of, oh my goodness, what's my score saying today is going to drive me crazy, but more on a healthy side. Can I notice some changes? Hey, this is up, this is down, this is the same. Let's get some health KPIs so that I can be preventative. I can be in front of something. Hey, this is looking great. Let me do more of this. Or I've really gone down in this area. Let me take a step back. Let me think of what's going on. Let me ask you a personal question when it comes to this, because I'm sure you've been there. I know I've been there. John, can you think of a time where you're at a fork in the road? From the business side, you keep on growing, you're going out there, you're scaling, you can make a big change. If you do that, though, it could come and likely will come at the cost of, it could be mental health, it could be physical health, it could be some other area in your life. Anything come to mind for that kind of situation? And what was that? How'd you deal with that?
You mean like the time that I worked 100 hours a week until I worked my way into a failed marriage? Like that? Does that count?
Yeah, like that. What can you tell us about that looking back at that? Now hindsight's always 2020. What would you want us to know?
Yeah, I mean, look, I worked 100 hours a week. I thought that's what I was supposed to do. I thought that hard work was the badge of courage at that moment. I didn't realize some of the mistakes that I was making. And certainly what that led to was a level of emotional disconnect from people. And looking back at those moments, I realized that even though I deeply cared about people, I was still very transactional in the way that I interacted with them looking back. And there are probably people from that time in my life who have some feelings about that may want to reach out to me and let me apologize. I'm here for you. And so it really changed my approach after, well, a car accident that had me thinking I was going to lose my life. And so I really did a lot of soul searching and I ended up in therapy. And I said, I really want to be successful, but I also don't want to treat people this transactionally was the real summarization of a part of the conversation. And so I changed my approach professionally to honoring what it means to be in a professional relationship that's appropriate, it's professional, it's high performance, it's all those things. And then there's a way to do that. And so I do think I run across people who are still very transactional in their relationships professionally. I meet people that are as successful or even more successful who are not transactional in their relationships, and they have very healthy functional, vibrant, high performance relationships. And those types of relationships exist too. And so it doesn't have to be one or the other. It's a false dichotomy.
And John, I couldn't agree more. As you're talking about this, I'm reflecting on my own mind. And really, it gets back to the situation. Let's go back to basics here and ask the question, well, hey, Jeffrey, why are you needed so much of the time? All the pressure's on you. Why is that the case? Why aren't there other people? Why is it just only you? It sounds like there's a potential problem there. And I know if I'm looking at bringing an investor in or having an exit, that's a huge problem. It's a risk and it can hurt me. And so Deep Health Nation, if you find yourself in that situation where you can't take the time off because you want to, or your health is beginning to falter, and my goodness, if I'm not there, the business is going to crumble. Well, there's the issue. There's the answer. There's the question all rolled into one. Let's start talking about that. Hey, Deep Health Nation, let's talk about that. That's what we do in the community. Let's see what's going on there, how we can help you with that. And it sounds like we've both been there, John. And the takeaway is we can be the architect of our life if we choose to be, that we can architect it in a way that, okay, there's other people. I have a team, or you know what? I'm just walking away from this because, yeah, sure, I can do that, but at what cost?
I might be even more pointed than that. I would say that if you choose not to architect it, that's a choice too. And then you're giving somebody else the opportunity to architect your life for you, and you may not like the outcomes. And so if you choose not to grab the wheel, then you're just going to go wherever the weather pushes you or wherever the current pushes you. And so, like, you get a choice, but not making a choice is a choice too. And the chances of you ending up where you want to end up, like, it's not good if you don't make that choice yourself.
Words to the wise, oftentimes not making the choice is the choice, and it's the worst possible choice because, to your point, John, I'm like that proverbial ship without the rudder. I'm just going wherever the ocean is taking me, wherever the currents are taking me, having no say, control, or insight on that. Not going to be a good place. I'm now at the whims of other people. Health will suffer, life will suffer, the business will suffer. So not great. So Deep Wealth Nation, be deliberate about that and take John's advice on that. And John, before we go into wrap up mode, I have a question. It's actually a question with a question. So many things that we haven't yet covered. Haven't even talked about AI yet. Haven't even talked about some other things on the
Yeah.
health side yet. That said, though, is there one important question that you and I haven't yet covered that you'd like to get out there to Deep Wealth Nation?
I love what you're doing with all the people you're working with. And I think that I tend to frame that kind of in the lens of the Japanese ikigai, which I'm not sure how to say that correctly or not say that correctly. But the idea that understanding what you're talented at and skillful at versus what you're passionate about versus what the world is going to pay you for, and then what mark you want to leave on the world. Like, I think I would just say, have those conversations in community. Like, I do it with my friends, I do it with my coworkers. Like, we talk about these things, not every day, not every month, but every quarter, every twice a year. We really put some time and some thought into these things just to take stock and say, like, because that, for me, happiness is not something you find by chasing it directly. Like, happiness is a byproduct of a life well lived. And a life well lived is about that Venn diagram of those questions being answered for you and being willing to, like, make adjustments and shifts. And we're in a changing world. But that world, for people who have those questions being answered, it's not going to be an unhappy world. It's just going to be a little bit different. And that's been true for millennia.
Having the community, the friendships, the relationships where, hey, I'm not alone, I have other people. Even goes back to how we started the conversation around spirituality. I'm in a community where we legitimately care about each other outside of the business side of things, and we take an interest with each other. It's interesting, John, because we hear about these blue zones, but I look to the blue zones. I can, to the best of my abilities, manufacture or create my own blue zone where I am. I don't have to go halfway around the
That's
world.
right. That's
And
right.
what's interesting with that, though, when you do look at the blue zones, one of the common threads, whether it's in Japan or halfway around the world, it's that community factor.
That's it.
That the centurions, they're way out there and they're healthy, they're active, they've got their faculties. They also have deep friendships and rituals, and they have a community. And it's so ironic that today, with social media, with technology, we should be closer than we've ever been. For many people, though, sadly, that's not the case. And we don't have the community. We don't have those relationships. Before we go into wrap up mode, would love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't say it any better. I think relationships are really foundational to long-term health. And, finding, when you deal with anxiety and depression, helping people see the world as bigger than themselves. And I remember someone saying that they had prescribed to one of their patients working in a nonprofit for someone who was subclinically depressed. So, and to me, it was like, wow, like, how do I be a net giver? Like, how do I make sure I'm always adding more value than I'm taking? Like, that's been a really positive perspective for me. Whereas early in my career, it was always quid pro quo. Like, if I give them this, what do I get in return? And so now I tend to only think in terms of what am I giving, not being blind to the fact that business is transactional in some ways, but really valuing relationship. And so, yeah, I think, and that extends personally, professionally. I think, yeah, I could talk about relationship for like hours. I can go into like what skills you build and how you, like, I'm obsessed with like, how can I get better at being a better friend and a better family member and a better business partner? And yeah, that's a lifelong pursuit for me.
John, I want to go back to something that you said in that before we go into wrap up mode and talked about being a giver or a net giver. It's interesting. I don't believe in coincidences. As I've been doing my rounds of podcasts, I've heard that quite a few times now of being a net giver. Very successful individual said, Jeffrey, if I had to choose between two people, we're talking about the sales side. One salesperson was a taker. They're a mercenary, incredibly successful. The other salesperson that I can bring on the team, They're not as successful on the sales side. They're not selling as much. They're a giver, though. I'm going to take the giver every time because I know I'm going to have a better company, a better team. And I know also as entrepreneurs, hey, if we're not finding painful problems, and you found a very painful problem, very personal problem, and we're not solving that, that's a whole other discussion because it's at that intersection when we're helping enough people get what they want, then and only then we can eventually get what we want and not the other way around. So I'm with you on the giving side and making a difference. It is huge. And so that said, let's go into wrap up mode. It's a tradition here on the Deep Wealth Podcast. It's my privilege, my honor. Every guest, I ask the same question. It's the fun question. Let me set this up for you. When you think of the movie Back to the Future, you have that magical DeLorean car that will take you to any point in time. So, John, it's tomorrow morning. This is the fun part. You look outside your window. Not only is the DeLorean car curbside, it's open the door. It's waiting for you to hop on in, what you do. You're now going to go to any point in your life. John, as a young child, a teenager, whatever point in time it would be, what would you tell your younger self in terms of life lessons or life wisdom? Or, hey, John, do this, but don't do that. What would it sound like?
Yeah, I think for me, it's probably a little deeper question you might get for some people. So I lost my dad when I was 11 years old, and I didn't know how to process that. And that cost me a lot in the next 20 years. That 100-hour work week was a function of how I coped with that, and how I treated people was a function of that. So I would go back to myself probably 3 or 4 years after he died, 14, 15 years old. And I would give myself the kind of unconditional love and the space to say it's okay to go process that and to not harden yourself to the relationships around you. Because a lot of the people at that point in my life, I don't have relationships with now. I know people that have deep, deep relationships from early in their childhood and their teenage years that I just didn't carry through for reasons that were my own making and for reasons I deeply understand now. And I have great relationships now and great friendships. And so I don't feel like I'm alone today, but there are a lot of people that I would have enjoyed the opportunity to get to know them more deeply in those points of life where I didn't have that. And interesting side note, if you ever invite me back, you can talk about how they filmed Back to the Future on the street that I grew up on and how Michael J. Fox ended up in my dining room or my kitchen table for lunch one day, much to my mom's horror because she didn't know I was bringing Michael J. Fox to lunch. And I was a 12-year-old kid. So what a great guy. Like, just what a great guy.
Wow. I mean, that's a whole other story behind the story. I absolutely love that. And so here to go back to your younger self in that DeLorean car, if you could put that in a sentence or two, what would that sound like? What would you be saying?
What would I say to my younger self in a sentence or two? I would say, even though you got hurt, it's going to be okay. And even if you get hurt again, it's going to be okay. Keep putting yourself out there.
Wow, what terrific advice and heartfelt condolences on such a tragic loss you went through at a very young age. Takeaway being so valuable. Hey, if you get hurt, even if you get hurt again, it's all going to be okay. It's really having that courage to go forward and believing in yourself and knowing that you can do it. It's a message we don't hear enough of these days.
What a great question.
Something to really take back, no matter where you are in your life, know that, hey, believe in yourself. You're going to get through this. If you're hurt now, it's okay. You'll come out the better for it, the stronger for it. You'll get through it. Absolutely love that. And John, someone in Deep Wealth Nation, they want to speak with you and the team. They want your help. You can help them with their health and get to the next level, or maybe even some advice of where they're at from a business level. Where would be the best place online to reach you?
I mean, you can find me at Precina, Precina, Precina.com. It's just first name dot last name at Precina.com. I'm super available and reachable. Come connect with me on LinkedIn. Just say John Oberg on LinkedIn. You'll come find me. You'll see me there. My email address is john.oberg@johnoberg.com. Like, they all come to the same place. So if you want to get a hold of me, get a hold of me personally. You want to get a hold of my company, we're easy to find. Come check us out. If you want to come listen to Tales of Abundance, come listen to our podcast and hear about stories of hope where we tell just fun, uplifting stories about all kinds of life. But if you want to connect, do reach out. I'm available. I'm easy to get a hold of. I make myself available for new connections all the time.
And Deep Wealth Nation, it doesn't get any easier, doesn't get any better. All of this is in the show notes. My goodness, John has shared his personal email. Reach out to him, ask a question, subscribe to his podcast, Tales of Abundance. Hey, why not? We can all have some more abundance in our lives. Go to that conversation, speak with John. You'll walk out a whole lot better. John, all of that said, it's official. Congratulations. This is a wrap. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Thank you.
So there you have it, Deep Wealth Nation. What did you think? So with all that said, and as we wrap it up, I have another question for you. Actually, it's more of a personal favor. Did you find this episode helpful? Have you found other episodes of the Deep Wealth Podcast empowering and a game changer for your journey? And if you said yes, and I really hope you did, I have a small but really meaningful way that you can actually help us out and keep these episodes coming to you. Are you ready for it? The dramatic pause. I'll just wait a moment. Drum roll, please. Subscribe. Please subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast on your favorite podcast channel. When you subscribe to the Deep Wealth Podcast, you're saving yourself time. Every episode automatically comes to you. And I want you to know that we meticulously craft every one of our episodes to have impactful strategies, stories, expert insights that are designed to help you grow your profits, increase the value of your business, and yes, even optimize your post-exit life and your life right now, whatever you want that to look like. And every time you subscribe and a fellow entrepreneur subscribes, it's a testament to how together, yes, we are changing the social fabric of society. One business owner at a time, one liquidity event at a time. So don't let the momentum stop here. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast channel. You'll never miss an episode. You'll be the first to hear from the top industry leaders, the innovators, the disruptors that are really changing and shaping the business world. And maybe you're commuting, maybe you're at the gym, maybe you're taking a well-deserved break that we spoke all about on this episode. The Deep Wealth Podcast, it's your reliable source for the next big idea that could literally revolutionize your business. So once again, please hit that subscribe button, stay connected, inspired, and ahead of the curve. And again, your next big breakthrough moment, it might just be one episode away. Maybe it was even this episode. So all that said, thank you so much for listening. And remember, your wealth isn't just about the money in the bank. It's about the depth of your journey and the impact that you're creating. So let's continue this journey together. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening to this episode. And as we love to say here at Deep Wealth, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much. God bless.